Assalamualaikum to Sir Muhammad Firdaus and to my fellow friends. I hope you guys have amazing day today because we will learn about the violence in sport and sport elimination on this chapter 5. Before we start, I would like to introduce to you guys my dearest group members. Let's take a look. This presentation is presented by the coolest one, Raja Aina, the handsome one, Daniel Russell, the intelligent one, Shazwani Safwan, and me, myself, Nordiana Izzati binti Muhammad Jafri. So we will move to the next slide. Since we will learn about the violence in sport, did you guys know what is violence? Yes, I will explain to you guys about the definition of violence. Violence is the physical force exerted for the purpose of trying to injuring another, and it also defined as the intention of someone to take out or debilitate an opponent as a desired goal, a part of trying to win the competition or the tournament. So now, on this slide, we will learn about three types and purpose of rules. We have the constitutive rules, prescriptive rule, and also the sportsmanship rules. So we will go through one by one. So let's take a look. So here we are. For constitutive rules, it is the rules that guide play within the specific games, and it also stipulates game-specific skills, strategies, and also the technique. And these rules is to prevent the athlete or the team from trying to harm the opponent with intentionally, and to create the fair play among them during the competition or the tournament. And the most important one, class, these rules is legislated by the governing bodies, and the last one is it is regulated by age, weight, skill level, and the maturational status of youth in the certain league. For example, in weightlifting competition, they have several categories, such as in men categories, they have 55 kilogram categories, 61 kilogram categories, and 73 kilogram categories. Therefore, the athlete will compete with the person who have the same level of weight categories, and it shows this competition create the fairness among the athlete to compete with one and another. And the next one, I have one video to show to you guys, and for you guys to think wisely about the answer, and you can comment on the WhatsApp group. Now we will discuss about the prescriptive rules. Prescriptive rules is expressly prohibit the specific action, and it established to prohibit the players from intentionally trying to harm the opponent, and in these rules, the guilty player often getting the suspension from the sport governing bodies. This is example of the prescriptive rules where the players has been suspended for her action during this competition.
Punches her in the back, and then she fights through Cassidy Shumway, knocks her to the ground here, and then Lambert takes Payne's legs out without touching the ball, and here she is with Shumway again getting tangled up on the ground, and then this one was the worst of them all. She pulls Shumway's ponytail and pulls her down to the ground, and this continued. Watch as Lambert goes after on a hard challenger, trips a BYU player, and then the BYU player is on the ground, and you can see the ball is kicked into her face, what appears to be purposely. She received a yellow card there. The referees finally intervened. More rough stuff. You'll see Lambert and Payne again. Hard challenge by the ball. A couple of punches are thrown in. BYU would win this game 1-0, and there's been a lot of attention, as you might imagine, to all of this, and thus Elizabeth Lambert released this statement today. I am deeply and wholeheartedly regretful for my actions. My actions were uncalled for. I let my emotions get the best of me in a heated situation. I take full responsibility for my actions and accept any punishment felt necessary from the coaching staff and UNM administration.
Now we in the last types of the rules, which is the sportsmanship rules. Sportsmanship is the fair and generous behavior of the others, especially in this sporting contest, such as the player shows some respect toward the rules or the player shows some respect toward the opponent. And it same goes to the understanding of and commitment to fair play and also show some integrity toward the opponent. It also prevents ethically questionable and sometimes violent conduct.
This is example of sportsmanship that happened in this match.
Now we in the categorical imperative. The first one is the true sport person will play to the best of their abilities within the letter and the spirit of the rules. And the second one is seeking to win is acceptable if the letter and the spirit of the rules are followed. And as the good athlete, they must be remembered the opponent is not the enemy but a worthy athlete deserving to be treated as everyone wishing to be treated. And the fourth one is retribution is never acceptable regardless the unfairness or violence of the initial action. And sportsmanship requires modesty and humility in victory, praise for winner and self-respect in defeat. And the last one is the games are not played to intimidate. The ideal purpose is a mutual quest for excellent, true, equitable and fair play competition. And that's it from me. I will pass to the next presenter, Danny Rosso.
Thank you, Diana Jeffrey, for your presentation. And now, I will continue to present on how violence affects sport. There are 5 subtopics that I will present, which is why violence exists, why violent behavior is taught, why violence is condoned, why and how violence is rewarded, and the last one is the impact of violence on sport. So, let's look at the first subtopic, which is why violence exists. So, violence occurs when a sportsman or athlete has aggressive tendency and needs socially acceptable outlets for their exist. In addition, social learning theory speculates that violence occurs because it is modeled and people mimic the victory or rewarded behavior they observe from the television or others that influence them to act violently. And lastly, the rules of the sports and people fail to hold themselves accountable to the spirit of the rules, which means the athlete did not obey the law that already stated in the rule. Let's look at the second subtopic, which is why violent behavior is taught. So, coaches teach their athlete to act violent way in order to gain a competitive edge over their opponents. Moreover, violent behavior often are learned and modeled, especially in the media or in the video. Lastly, the higher the level of the competition, the more the intense is the pressure exerted by the coach for athletes to perform in violent way in order them to win the game. Let's look at the third subtopic, why violence is condoned. Violence continue because some fans enjoy it and the media glamorize it, and it helps athletes to win the game. Thus, it will make less moral value in the athlete and more gamesmanship rather than the sportsmanship, because winning is the chief culprit through which violence continue in the sport. And lastly, violence is condoned because they're competing to perform the best of one's ability that defines the sports itself. Next subtopic is why and how violence is rewarded. Violence pay dividend to those who are practice it when it's apt in winning the games. When the athlete win the competition, the reward recognition will follow through. It also used to intimidate the opponents to make the rival fearful and frightened. And lastly, sports rules over the years have been liberalized to reward violence in less more reasoning in athlete ethics. the last subtopic is the impact of violence on sport. It can make a travesty of the meaning of sport, erodes which sport supposedly to be enjoyable and not to be frightened. Besides that, it will reduce the good moral value in the athlete. Thus, they will be focusing on gaining advantage to win upon their opponent. Moreover, it can affect the society or the culture, which make the spectators believe that sport is dangerous because it consists of violence. Lastly, if violence in sport continue, athletes will like to engage with the violence as an attraction to them. Now, that marks the end of my presentation. I hope you understand and we will continue to the next presenter, Syazwani Zulaika.
Thank you Ahmad Daniel for the presentation. Now, we will continue on the next part, which is sport elimination. In this part, I will cover on sport elimination and sport dropout. So, let's take a look on the definition of sport elimination and sport dropout. So, let's continue on the definition of sport elimination and sport dropout. For the first one, what is sport elimination? Sport elimination refers to individual or team is eliminated from the competition. This usually occurs due to lack of success, lack of fun, and pressure to win. For example, the Chicago Blackhawks teams were eliminated from Stanley Cup playoff due to loss 5 to the Carolina Hurricanes. Meanwhile, sport dropout refers to the voluntary or involuntary separation from sports due to some of the factors such as lack of skills, sport not fun anymore, and pressure to win. Move to the next part, which is factors leading to sport dropout. Basically, on this slide, there are 3 factors, which the first one is lack of skills. Lack of skills refers to someone who are incompetent or does not able to do something well. Secondly is sports not fun anymore. When we talk about not fun anymore, the words that come to our mind is not giving satisfaction or does not feel enjoy. And lastly is pressure to win. It refers to the parties that put pressures towards someone to win in a competition or tournament that they are participate. So now, let's continue on the next part, which is factors leading to sport dropout, which will be defined in 4 categories or level of sports. As you guys can see on this slide, there are 4 categories or level of sports. For the first one is lack of skills for youth sports. This to be happen when some of them thinks that result is more essential rather than performance. It indicates that only high skilled children will be selected in a team. For example, Children A is more skillful in dribbling the hockey ball rather than Children B. Thus, it leads the Children A to be selected in a team. Therefore, it will be highly sensitive to a Children B's feeling in order to think deeply to not participate in that sport. Secondly is lack of skill for interscholastic sport. This refers to the limitation numbers of boys and girls who wanted to participate in a team. This shows that every schools have their own perspective in order to select an athlete to bring in a competition. Thirdly is lack of skill for intercollegiate sports. This refers to the individual or teams who adopt new interests which they decided to no longer join any competition. This is because only high-skilled athletes will be selected as a collegiate athletes. For the last one is lack of skill for professional sport. This shows that some of athletes withdraw from anything that associate with sport experience. For example, some of athletes withdraw from the competition or sports due to the prolonged injury. The second factors leading to sport dropout refers to sports not fun anymore. For the first one is youth sports level. It indicates that children are not enjoy nor have any interest to involve with the sports anymore. This has led them to quit from the sport immediately. For instance, some of children tend to quit from the sport due to not receiving any feedback from their coaches. As in interscholastic sports, the sport usually not giving them fun, either socially or psychologically, due to the high competition of large numbers of students in the schools. This has made them to feel bored to compete with others in order to be selected. Next is intercollegiate sports level. The academic reasons or changes of new interests has made the collegiate athletes decided to stop from the sports. For instance, as a student, we need to balance our academic and sports. Therefore, the collegiate athletes decided to stop from the sport in order to get a better results in their academic. Lastly is professional sport. Sometimes the athlete might feel the sports not fun anymore when they confronted with loss, seldom playing, or has just been a substitute in any competition or sports that they are participate. Now, we are at the last factors leading to sport dropout, which is pressure to win. For the first one is your sports level. Sometimes, these positive factors can turn to negative when there is high pressures put by other parties towards someone in order to win in every competition that they are participate. For instance, parents that come to the stadium might give pressures towards their children in order to play their sport. Secondly is interscholastic sport. The high expectation put towards the athlete talents by the coaches will make the athlete feel pressure in order to compete. This will make the athletes to struggle and do not get any failure in order to fulfill their coach's desire. Thirdly is intercollegiate sports level. Most of collegiate coaches may exert high pressures towards the athlete when they have lack of balanced perspective towards the rules of sports. And lastly is professional sports level. The pressure can come from any parties as they want to ensure the objective are achieved. For example, Terengganu hockey team will face pressures from other parties as they hope they will win in the competition that they will involve. So, this is the end of my presentation. I hope that you guys will understand. I will pass to the last presenter who is Raja Aina.
Thank you, Shazwani, for the explanation on the sport elimination. So now I'm going to continue with the sport burnout. Sport burnout is where the athletes experience emotional and physical exhausted from dealing with continual stress and commitment of competition, training, and also the other demands for their time, such as school or work. Athletes would feel like they already work and train hard, yet they feel like the progress towards the goal are very minimal and not sufficient enough. That's when they experience low sense of accomplishment. Moreover, burnout happen when their peak performance has passed during their young age. Thus, they feel like they already lose interest and desires in playing sports. So now let's take a look at the types of sports burnout. There are 3 types of burnout, which is the first one is physical burnout, and there are levels which the athletes may experience the burnout itself. In youth sports, usually burnout happen because of overtraining. Overtraining is a condition where the athletes experience fatigue and decline performance despite their continuous and overloads of training. It can be resulted to mood changes, decreased motivation, and also often injured. In the interscholastic sport, athletes are often being forced by their parents for sport specialization, which they did not have the opportunity to explore other things because they have excessively narrowed down their sports participation. They have been taught that if they are in this industry, they need to be only in this industry for a long time, no other things, and it could lead to a burnout. Next, in the intercollegiate sports, the athletes have been taught to be tough and play throughout their injuries. And it's quite similar to the professional sports, where they are expected to play even though they have injuries. But to make it different, professional sports athletes are being paid, so they did not have any choice other than to play. And that could lead them to use drugs and lie about their seriousness of injuries. By this action, that could lead the athletes to get sick of it. Move on to the second type of burnout, which is a psychological burnout. In youth sports, young athletes are being pressured to improve their past performance and win the competition. When they are being pressured, they started to feel the burnout. Like, I don't want to do this anymore, why am I doing this? They have that kind of thoughts. Being pressured is kind of like common things among athletes. We can see it in the interscholastic sports where the pressure is increased whenever they started to represent the school. And we also can see it in the intercollegiate sports where the college athletes are being pressured to perform at their peak of abilities. And if they don't win it,
they might need to face the pressure again, or maybe worse than that. Moreover, in professional sports, many athletes, for psychological reasons, they started to lose their interest, lose their desires to play. Somehow they feel like they don't have the abilities and skills to play anymore due to the burnout that they experience. When athletes have a thought to quit sports, they might have a symptom of sports burnout. So now let's take a look at the last type of sports burnout, which is social burnout. Athletes at their young age usually experience social burnout whenever the sport became their passion. This occurs when they do not really want to participate, but they feel like they have to maintain their involvement in sports because of the social pressure that they get from the others. Furthermore, some of the athletes may quit sports just so they can live like others in their age. And it might happen in the interscholastic sports. And it's called social isolation that makes them think that they are stuck in this forever. And it might traumatize them just from thinking about the social isolation. Moreover, college athletes tend to interact socially other than their teammates because they feel like they have seen each other often during their academic and athlete schedules. So they try not to have too much time together in order to avoid the social burnout. It also can be applied to professional sports where the athletes feels like they don't have much control over their lives due to the packed schedules from the competition, training and practice. They feel like they don't have much time for themselves, families and kids, and it contributes to a biggest factor of sports burnout. Alright, so now let's take a look at the case study that can be related with our topics for today. For the first case study is about violence that happened in the friendly match between two football teams in Singapore. It all started when one of the players executed a flying kick towards an opponent, and things getting intense with all the players started to fight, that the referees need to tell the field warden to call the police. The referee of the match, Mr. Mustafa, said that the match was tense overall, with the players pushing and shoving one another, and ended with an elbow 20 minutes before the end of the game. So the result from the fight caused two men to be hospitalized, and one of them was violently headbutted. There was blood all over the place. So we can see that violence can take place among athletes when the anger and emotion conquers them. You may be treated unfairly, but the violence is never the answer. Next case study is a bit different from the other one, where the violence is caused by the fans, not the athletes. In this case study, Manchester United fans are protesting against the club American owners, the Glazer family, where United is involved in an attempt to create a breakaway European Super League. It has been seen that a flag was thrown at the broadcaster podium as the fans running to the field, and protesters clashed with the police outside the ground. Due to the protest that takes place, a match between Manchester United and Liverpool on that day need to be called off. Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham expressed support for the aims of the protesters, but criticized the violence. He said that it is important to protest peacefully. However, there is no excuse for the actions to injure the police officer and endangered safety of others. Overall, Manchester United decides to punish fans who committed the criminal acts in the protests, and this will become a police matter. In conclusion, there are many ways on how athletes can deal with sports disengagement. They need to be prepared and cope with the situation no matter what levels they are in. In youth and scholastic program, it should involve things such as having fun, learning skills, and working hard to keep the progress efficient. Moreover, the pressure around the athlete surrounding needs to be reduced, and that is very important. Overall, the athlete should be able to enjoy and have fun while doing sports in order to avoid unwanted things to happen, or the feeling of losing the interest on what they have been doing passionately. And that's all from us. Thank you for lending your time to watch this video presentation. Thank you and stay safe.